This interview was recorded on June 18, 2018. Susie Orbach was in London. Stefano Carpani was in Berlin. Technology helped to make this interview possible. This conversation focused on three main themes: feminism, relational psychoanalysis, and love. They started looking into what feminism is and what its relevance today, and how are women today. Then they looked into what relational psychoanalysis is and what is the aim of psychotherapy. In concluding this interview, Susie Orbach discussed what is love and why does love end.
Susie, thank you so much for your time today. I'm delighted to be here with you. You are the first non-Jungian psychoanalyst I'm having a conversation with.
Okay.
So I used to call this conversation breakfast at Kuznach. I will call this one breakfast beyond Kuznach.
Okay.
I have a very simple question for you. Since you are one of the first and most convincing voices that challenge patriarchal psychoanalysis, on May 17th, 2018, 1 month ago, you tweeted the photo of a manifest of the first and second feminist mass meeting in London 1914. The title of such meeting was, "What is feminism?" Susie, what is feminism?
Well, what the hell is it? It's so many different things. It's a political movement. It's a way of understanding the world, which pertains to how we construct psychologies of femininity and masculinity. It's a critique of those. It's a way of challenging, of putting the finger or the light on patriarchy. Are you getting feedback? Because I am. No?
Nope. For me it's okay.
And it's a way of, look, there's many feminisms, but I'm a political feminist, and in that sense I'm not that interested in reproducing the system but just putting women in power. I'm more interested in what feminism has to tell us about how the world hurts all of us, how it hurts women, how it hurts boys, how it hurts men, how patriarchy is a model, if you like, for forms of social control. And this is there's the most terrible feedback. I'm going to try and cut something here. It may be your other machine rather than, let me see if that cuts it. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
And what's interesting about feminism is that it goes in and out of being considered something that people want to support. So at the moment, because of Me Too and Time's Up, it's fine for people to call themselves feminists. But for a long period in the 1990s and the beginning of this century, you were considered very sad if you mentioned feminism. And so there are all sorts of different conversations that happened around gender conscious psychoanalysis or attacks on the binary, ways of trying to talk about the same material but not with the use of the F word.
Yes. On such tweet you wrote, "We are still at it." More than 100 years after such conference, 50 years after the 68, 40 years after your book, Fat is a Feminist Issue. What is the relevance of feminism today?
Well, I think the relevance is everywhere. It's from who cleans the toilet bowl to how we look after the earth, to what we mean by relationship, to critiques of hypercapitalism. Feminism has really profound things to say about how we organize society, and from a psychoanalyst perspective, how that organizes our internal world and our relationship to it. So it's like a permanent revolution, I suppose. And as soon as we think we've understood something, it throws up new things, which allows us to deepen our analysis and our and it spreads light on things we hadn't thought of before. So the relevance is enormous. And I think what's interesting is that just in this Me Too moment, it exists in 196 countries. We're not talking about this being something that only happens in advanced capitalism. It wasn't started by movie stars. It was started by farm workers. And I think it's important to recognize that when women come together to highlight a problem, it also affects men. It doesn't, and they begin to think too. So where we're still at it means we're still making trouble and trying to make a society that has some humanity in it and isn't all caught up with brutality. And I don't mean by that we don't have conflict. We should all be sweet and soft and lovely, because that isn't it. That's not what the human being is. But ways of understanding conflict, or why aggression comes instead of vulnerability, or how we protect ourselves, those are psychoanalytic concerns, but they're also feminist concerns.
For my next question, I will use this book.
The Impossibility of Sex, yeah.
Yes. I'm thinking of Carol and Maria.
Yeah.
You wrote, they were women of their time, free to work, to enter social territories that had previously been off limits, to be more or less open about their sexuality, to map their own lives. You also add, they loved their work and found it very meaningful, but they did not want it to overtake them. And then you write, they struggled between dependency, independence, nurturing one another and being nurtured. How are women today?
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
I think,
yeah.
I think the whole issue of dependency and attachment and autonomy and work is still very much on the agenda. I come across young women who feel it's very bad to have any dependency needs. They feel very ashamed of them. They don't know whether their work should occupy a huge amount of their life, or whether or where it should sit. That's particularly women in their 20s and 30s, but they have a judgment that what feminism has meant, or what the doors are that we opened mean, is that they should be okay, whereas the world isn't okay. They needed to have been brought up to know that the world is full of struggle, and there's psychological struggle as well, to manifest yourself, to dare to express your longings, to dare to connect with others in a way that is both separate and connected, because that's really what the struggle is. I think both within feminism and within psychoanalysis is, how do you do a separated attachment? So you're not cut off, but you're not merged. And in that case, or that imagined case, because they don't exist, those women, they brought a third party into it in order to deal with the problems of not knowing how to take up their own space, as I remember it anyway. I wrote it a long time ago. That's got to be 20 years ago.
Yes, they brought in a third party. I'm very interested on these issues, especially because starting my praxis, it's interesting to work with especially women that really duel between their work, they love it, perhaps their family, their partner, their kids, and not being overwhelmed by all these, let's call it, in Giddens terms, self-reflexivity, in these freedom, of being able to really live a life, but then to have to tick the mark. I have a patient who say, and I tick the Excel chart, and is very interesting to work
Yeah,
this way.
I mean, I think I don't know, I've had the experience with some young women that they've ticked all the boxes, but they don't exist. I've got the girl, I've got the boyfriend, I've got the body, I've got the job, but I don't, well, it's not even I'm not happy. It's I've achieved, but those things are not integrated. They're not part of me. They're just, and I think that is partly because feminism, or their mothers, it's not to blame their mothers, but it was the historical moment when they were raised, which was to project onto those girls and foster ambition without actually underpinning it with, actually, it's very hard to do all these things. So they feel a bit empty, I think, and that's just my experience. I mean, there's a very good example of it in a recent book of mine, in which the character Helen is in that situation. She's a lawyer, she's got everything going for her, but she doesn't exist.
As missing substance. Well, my generation, I would be 40 very soon, in 1 month, but I remember my mother telling me, well, you will be part of the household, you will do things. So she was not a feminist de jure, she was a feminist de facto. And it's very interesting that perhaps some boys grew up and became much more active in, as Erickson would say, equal and equivalence. But, and this is my bias against sociology, is not because people are individualized, as Beck says it, or self-reflexive, as Giddens says it, that everything is much easier, that the emotion within the family are not there anymore, and there is equality and equivalence. I think we are very, very far from this point of view. What do you think?
Well, my children grew up with two very active parents, a male and a female. But my son still wanted to characterize everything as what daddies do and what mummies do. Nothing to do with the cooking or the housework, but daddies play tennis, mummies write books. The fact that daddy'd also written books was a hard thing, a hard concept. And children do grow up absorbing what is. That is their normality. Does it make them more able to enter into wider forms of masculinity and femininity? In some cases, yes. In some cases, no, not at all, because the culture says, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, and you want to join your poor peer group. I don't think I've answered your question, but I don't think, I think it's the emotional ground that they grow up with, but I think they can be rejecting of it too.
From feminism to relational psychoanalysis. Mm-hmm. You joined relational psychoanalysis, you're a strong voice there. I really like it, not only because Andrew Samuels is my PhD supervisor, and obviously I'm very close to it, but because I find that in relational psychoanalysis, the different voices of psychoanalysis from the beginning, from Freud up to you, to Jessica Benjamin, can be included as a big family. What is relational psychoanalysis?
Well, it's so interesting because it brings together different strands. But for Louise Eichenbaum and I, who wrote together in the early 80s and created, we didn't have the word relational psychoanalysis. What we thought we were doing, not at the level of the intimate relationship, but at the level of the theory, was we would have described it as social object relations. In other words, we understood that the internal world was intricately constructed in relation to what was the world that the parents grew up in, and that the parents were culture, and that so when relational psychoanalysis erupted, it was pretty much what we were doing, except I don't think it acknowledged its debt to feminists who had said, we're going to be psychoanalysts, but we're not going to just be the object of the patient. We're not just going to be the better object. We're also going to be a subject in the analysis. And we're going to look at this as a practice in which there are two subjects struggling. Obviously not we're bringing our struggles to the therapy room, but we're processing everything. We're thinking. We are engaged in a way that is not from a surgical position, but it's from a subject position. So when Stephen Mitchell and other people started to write about that, it seemed to echo everything we'd been saying, except they didn't pick up gender as an issue. And I remember going to the psychoanalytic conference in Peru with Louise, and we gave a paper on relational psychoanalysis as unacknowledged depths of feminist psychoanalysis. So, but I think it was understanding both the here and now relationality, the struggle for connection, the fear of connection, the being on the side of the person you're working with at the same time as being in what Jessica would call a third position. I would say more inside of myself and holding the therapeutic couple, but that's fine. I think that's what we found and what was developed. It was the struggle for recognition inside of the therapy relationship, which mirrored the struggle for recognition outside. But in the therapy, you could deal with all the defenses against it and all the difficulties around recognition and attachment and, of course, dependency, because in a way, recognition is another way of talking about dependency and autonomy. Is that the kind of answer you're looking for?
Well, I'm not looking for any specific answer.
Okay.
It's really a conversation, but while you were talking, I was fantasizing about your therapy room, and I was asking myself, is she using a couch? Is she not? Is she sitting face to face? And as a Jungian or training candidate at the Jung Institute in Zurich, we don't use couches. We don't use that much. If we do, is we can look at each other. And what was the question? Could be Jung taken as a pioneer of relational psychoanalysis?
Of course, definitely. I think, look, within Jungian thought, within Barlin's thought, within Sati, there's so many strands for this, aren't there? And I think the geography of the consulting room is really interesting to me, or the architecture, however you want to think about it. I don't actually have a couch. I couldn't possibly, because I'm too interested in bodies. And somebody doesn't have to look at me. But I don't want them floating off. I want them in the room.
Yeah.
And I've never found people unable to either free associate or ignore me or do anything they want with chairs. It's fine. I have a couch. Nobody lies on it. I mean, it's a sitting up couch, not a lying down couch. And I don't like the implicit inequality of the couch. It doesn't work for me.
You just mentioned Balint.
Yeah.
And he asked, what is the aim of therapy? According to him, it was about elaboration. what is the aim of therapy at the beginning of 21st century, more than 100 years after the beginning of psychoanalysis?
Well, I could be very superficial and say I go along with Freud that the aim of therapy is to transform neurosis, but by that we don't mean neurosis, we mean really troubled minds and bodies, into ordinary unhappiness. I could say that. I still feel that is true, that the capacity to feel a range of feelings in a non-hystericized form, the ability to have a history that is alive and reworked at different points in your life. It's history, but you reflect on it differently at different points. The ability to situate yourself inside of yourself instead of always in projections.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to surrender and be vulnerable and to connect, but also to feel that there are bits of you that are private and perhaps impermeable. It's a way to join up different aspects of self. It's about encouraging the person to keep a curiosity about life, about themselves. It's about expanding your emotional and literal vocabulary, I think.
Revolution?
Not therapy. No, therapy is not a political practice to me. Politics is a political practice.
I say
No, I
this.
don't think so.
No. Ulrich Beck, in his last book, although posthumous, wrote that the word is out of joint, that there are no Hegelian categories that could explain the word. My claim is that this sociology, traditional sociology, Beck, Giddens, Bauman, missed to understand the unconscious. And if they did so, they went looking into the Freudian dogma as the Frankfurt School did it. Is the word out of joint?
Well, I think that's where contemporary psychoanalysis helps us, because contemporary Jungians, contemporary Freudians, contemporary relationals, contemporary intersubjectives don't look for specific interpretations of the unconscious. In fact, I don't even think we believe there is a place called the unconscious. I think we believe in unconscious processes, which we can never be fully aware of, and yet they motivate, enrich, get in our way, do all sorts of things. So I don't think we're looking for the specificity of anything. And I think the psychoanalytic way of thinking, or my psychoanalytic way of thinking, is very capacious. It can go very wide, and it can go very tiny and intricate. So it doesn't feel to me that it's out of step, but it isn't a theory of the world. It's a theory and a practice of human interaction and human subjectivity, just like physics is a theory about elementary particles, or chemistry is about and we're still very, very much at the beginning of understanding what it means to be human and how humans operate. I tend to think of myself as an anthropologist of the mind, really, and that I meet more and more tribes every day, or different people every day, who have lots in common, but have idiosyncratic, personal, specialist things inside of them. And that, of course, if I look at them, I can see social relations embedded in them. I can understand exactly what Karl Marx is talking about, but not the specificity that the Frankfurt School would have given them. That makes sense.
Looks like you're reading in my mind quoting Balin first and now Marx, because the next question is about love, actually. Sociologist Eva Illouz claims that, quote, I believe emotional suffering is connected, albeit in complex ways, to the organization of economic and political power. She continues, it is the fact that the feminist revolution, which was necessary, salutary, and is unfinished, has not fulfilled man and woman's deep longing for love and passion. Would you agree?
I don't know who she's writing about. The whole world, yes, she's right. But specific enclaves, no, she's wrong. And it's too big a question for me.
She also claimed that the grand ambition of the book she published recently, called Why Love Hurts, has to do with emotion, at least romantic love. And she claims that she did something similar to Marx, what Marx did to commodities, therefore to show that they are shaped by social relations, that they do not circulate in a free and unconstrained way, that their magic is social, and that they contain and condense the institutions of modernity. I personally claim this is wrong, because if we don't look into the emotion are social, but the social without the emotion will bring us to a dead corner. What do you think?
I'd have to read it and absorb it and think it. I don't think it's I don't want to elevate love above everything else. And I don't know that love is a commodity, although it becomes commoditized. And I don't know, it is an exchange. I need to think about it. It's not how I would be conceptualizing it.
Let me then ask you a very, very simple question. What is love?
Well, I don't think it is a simple question, because love is about if I think about it for myself, love is about what moves me. Love is about what I care about. Love is also very connected to the things that I could also hate for the things that I care about. So love might be about an offering that you make, but love is relational in some sense. It isn't only about me. It's provoked by my understanding of myself as a therapist, as somebody who looks at a flower, as somebody who cooks a meal, as somebody who's a grandmother. I mean, it's a chord with a lot of different notes in it. And it's not reducible in some simplistic way for me. About hurts the emotion.
No, why love hurts?
Why do I think it hurts? Because we have longings, and we have fears, and we're quite scared to reveal ourselves, or to hope, or that love will last. That when we have love, we sometimes get lazy and close down. We don't stay open. I don't think love always does hurt, actually. I think it does hurt, but I don't think it only hurts. It can be bloody annoying, but it's, I don't know. It's not. I understand why love is hard to sustain for people, but I think that's different than why it hurts. And I think it's hard to sustain because I think we can get it's very interesting in the beginning when you love, whether it's a new friend or it's a lover. But it doesn't mean that you can stay open and alive in the way that you are in the beginning. You close down. and then
Therefore,
you
yeah,
get
yeah.
disappointed, and then you get too merged, or for all sorts of reasons, some of which are in that chapter in Impossibility.
Therefore, love ends or could end if curiosity ends, or what is it about?
Say that again.
Love ends. Love could end if we lose the ability of curiosity, perhaps, as you tried to write, I think, about Carol and Maria.
Yes, I think the thing is, love could end, but sometimes love ends because it needs to end. Sometimes love has actually cured you, given you something, and that's enough. Not everybody has to be in a relationship for 100 years. A relationship could last 6 years. It could last 10 years. I don't want to be prescriptive. Of course, love can end if you can't allow the other person to thrive and to be in the world. If you have to control them because you're so scared. But I also don't think there's only one formula for having love. I just don't. A love at 25 is not the same as late love. They're completely different propositions. If you are in the same relationship from 25 to 60, at 60 you've lived through a lot of disappointments with each other, but your love has survived. But supposing you meet somebody, you come out of a relationship, then you're no longer trying to build a life with somebody as though you're 25, because you already know who you are, right? It's just too hard to say love is this, love fails for this reason, love hurts for this reason. It's too complex.
Thank you, Susie.
Okay.
I just finished my question, and I really want to thank you again for your time today.
Pleasure. And good luck with your thesis.
Thank you, and I hope to meet you in person soon, one day or another.
Okay. All right, Stefano. Okay.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Okay.
Ciao.
Bye.